we have a huge oil prices. Like for Ukraine, it's like the nightmare. If Russia will earn more money and to invest this money again in the military and weapon technologies to pay money for like guys from Africa, so
they will be more closely controlling and maybe even restricting not just the things that are sent to Ukraine, but even the things that are purchased for Ukraine by European partners. So I think this is sort of a slow, if you can say that, because it's coming over a period of weeks or months, but there's another slow train which is headed at Ukraine, which is frankly quite worrying. Welcome to Ukraine Insights, the podcast about undercurrents of business and politics, where we bring you in-depth analysis and conversations with those who know Ukraine best. Brought to you by Kyiv Insights. Hello, everybody. My name is Jakub Parusinski. I'm the director of Kyiv Insights, joined today by Anatoliy Oktysiuk, senior political researcher. Anatoliy, thanks for being here. It's a lot warmer than than when we were here last time, so that's already some good news. But the year continues to be very intense. The topic of today will be Iran. What does it mean for Ukraine, for the war, for the people? Just sort of jumping in, one thing that I wanted to get your view on. I've heard it, I think, many times from a lot of Ukrainians, a lot of the people here, is just throughout these years of full-scale war, there's been this fatigue. Ukraine is sort of fighting alone against Russia, against North Korea, against Iran, to a lesser but still significant degree against China. It's sort of fighting for the free world against all of these different countries. And, there's this feeling that World War III is going to come soon. And there's people who are like almost, well, let it come already, because at least we won't be alone in sort of fighting this war. Do you think that's a sentiment that has been felt over the past week?
Well, yes, I have the same feeling. Hello, everyone. Hi, Jakub. Hi, dear friends. I have a feeling that, like the Third World War is already running, and probably after like 10 or 20 years, the historians will say that, the war in Ukraine, it was the first episode of this full-scale international conflict, because actually, if you take a look on economical competition, that the world actually has split it on two camps.
Yeah.
Like it's already split it. Like we may call it global south and like Western democracy versus Western democracy, but de facto the world has split it on two camps.
Yes.
So this is the basic feeling that economically we are running this war already. And mainly like everyone have to accept this reality that the world has changed after COVID. And I think the COVID, it was the main accelerator for these global changes. This is my personal feeling. And yeah, like we are witnesses of new global order, and de facto now all big players, they are violating international law.
Yeah.
Like even Trump, even Putin, even like not
even. I mean, it's clearly the international rules based order is that. I mean, you can probably quibble and say, are we in it already, or will we be in it when the third front opens, maybe potentially in East Asia? I think that's something that we'll get to.
We end the game. So honestly,
it's clearly here. We'll get to that part a little bit later. In today's discussion, but okay, so from Ukraine's perspective, again, this fight is going on, right? We've had a peace process. By the way, would love to hear your views on that. There might be still another meeting or two left, but it feels like it's very much exhausted its potential. And then all of a sudden, we have this new giant war erupting across the Middle East. What are in the midterm, right? Over the next coming months, do you see this as a net negative or a net positive for Ukraine?
Well, both positive and both negative, because it depends from long-term perspectives of this war. Because yes, basically, if you see, we have a huge oil prices. For Ukraine, it's like the nightmare. if Russia will earn more money and to invest this money again in the military and weapon technologies to pay money for like guys from Africa, they will have much more money for recruiting the soldiers and so on, so on. They will have a fuel for the war. It's bad for us.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's negatively affecting on our European partners. The oil prices is going up, and people are getting angry. In Ukraine as well, it's accelerate inflation, the prices for everything, for services, for food, for delivery, everything.
Yeah,
like it's very.
And
bad.
Europe is uniquely sensitive.
Exactly, Europe the most sensitive in this issue, and Putin is understanding that, and Russians, they say, oh, it's like good developments for them. So the question is for how long this crisis will run around Iran. If it will take more than 3 months, even 6 months, like it's very bad for us.
Yeah.
At the same time, the another problem is military supplies.
Yes.
We're afraid that one day Trump will say that, okay, like I'm busy with Iran conflict, and I would stop or reduce, supplies for Ukraine, like for European partners, because this is like very sensitive for us in terms of Patriot missiles, interceptors, and so on.
Yes.
At the same time, it makes big problems for conflict resolution in Ukraine, because Russia is feeling that they will have much more power, that Europe is very fragile around this oil crisis. They will have much more weapon. US is busy on Iran, and it makes Putin much more self-confident.
I definitely agree with that. I think one thing is, and again, contrary to, I think, some of the ways that it was presented, we did see a softening of the Russian position over the last 6 months when it came to some of the issues. The fact that there was progress on the peace talks, granted, it wasn't sort of tremendous progress, but that would not have happened if Russia felt secure. Right? We wouldn't have been even, hollow or empty as that dance may have been. It would not have happened if Russia felt very secure. I think that period is over. Right? Like that, anything is possible. Of course, we live in 2026. Who knows? In a month, there might be 2 wars fewer or 3 wars more. Right? But it seems very unlikely that Russia will be ready to compromise. At the same time, I think your point around the missiles and the available stockpiles for Ukraine, whether it's air defense, but also, frankly, any kind of military supplies, it's quite bad. I think it's worth unpacking a bit, because it's not just the fact that there might be not enough Patriots missiles for Ukraine to actually knock down missiles that Russia sends against Ukrainian cities. But it's more broadly the availability of any kit, because the US and the Gulf allies are just sort of consuming through that at such a pace that cannot be built up. And I think that's sort of on the one side. I think the other thing, which is almost certainly going to happen, especially if the war in the Gulf continues for even another 3 or 4 weeks, is that there will be a review of what are the military assets that America has, what are the stockpiles, where are the gaps, how much is sitting in Europe and how much is in Africa and how much is in the Indo-Pacific. And as a result of that review, they will move more assets out of Europe.
Right.
And they will be more closely controlling and maybe even restricting not just the things that are sent to Ukraine, but even the things that are purchased for Ukraine by European partners. So I think this is sort of it's a slow, if you can say that, because it's coming over a period of weeks or months, but there's another slow train which is headed at Ukraine, which is frankly quite worrying.
This is, actually what you say, Jakub, this is the part of very broad Ukrainian conspirological theory.
Okay. Tell me more.
Among the elites.
Yes.
Because, what I heard from my sources, the part of Ukrainian even ruling elites, they believe that this is also the plan of Trump.
Yes.
On one hand, to push with high prices on oil on Europe in order to be more, open for negotiations for lifting out sanctions against Russia. And on the other hand, like this is also put more pressure on Ukraine because we are, frankly speaking, we are dependent from American ammunition and so on, so on.
I think it's really interesting
Russia
you
is
say
winning.
that. Yeah.
Russia is winning in this.
Yes, I think it's really interesting that you say that because, well, first of all, I don't know how you feel, but I doubt that Trump has started a potentially presidency ruining and even sort of America unraveling war in the Middle East with the purpose of sort of just cajoling Ukraine and pressuring Ukraine.
No, we understand that it's supposed to be fast.
Just to be clear,
2-3 days,
right? But I think the fact that this is sort of a theory that is circulating tells you everything you need to know about the way that Ukrainian elites see this, right? Like there are all. Whether it's Trump, whether it's the Russians, it is essentially people who are shaping all of these external conditions in a way to sort of force Ukraine into a bad
because
deal,
otherwise
right?
Trump, he have to stop immediately in this war in Iran.
Yeah.
Because everyone is understanding that it's impossible to fulfill the political goals, the claimed goals, without ground operation, without troops in Iran or with their allies. It's impossible to switch this regime in Iran. Like otherwise, he is ruining rest of the old world order. Because what is Trump doing? This is about tactical winnings and strategical losing.
And I think
strategy.
Absolutely. And I think just sort of taking it back to sort of like why this is a net negative or a net positive for Ukraine. I mean, on the negative side, the risk is obviously, aside from the oil price for Russia, aside from the limits of the more limited available military stockpiles, the other problem is just diplomatic, public attention, the ability to mobilize the partners across the world to help Ukraine becomes more limited by the fact that there is another major war happening. So I think that's just a clear net negative. We saw that after October 7, and this is a continuation of this. A continuation on the one hand, but even it's more extensive. It involves more countries. It's bigger. So I think it does seem like a net negative. On the positive side. And this is an important thing. It seems that a lot of countries around the world have realized that drones, especially the originally sort of Iranian, well, I mean, depends on how far you want to dig. It's probably a copy of a copy of a copy. But the Iranian Shahed drones have created a new quality of threat in the international space. And that Ukraine's experience of being able to protect against that is something that is a huge asset. It's hugely valuable, and that Ukraine has actually a major contribution to global order in helping deploy its sort of drone interceptors, its experts, its electronic warfare capabilities. So that's a huge asset for Ukraine.
Exactly, yeah.
Do you think, how do you think that Ukraine is going to play this?
Well, it's very obvious. Like we are saying that very unique state, unique country with real combat experience and fighting against these drones, and with own technologies. What is more important? Because this is not only about mobile warfare groups which are on the tracks shooting the shaheds and so on. We are speaking more broadly about military technologies. And drone interceptors and own equipment which are helping to fight against these drones. So we're saying that we are not only receiving, but we are providing knowledge. Mm-hmm. This is the main important, that we have like combat knowledge, how to fight, and we have unique engineer knowledge.
Yes.
So this is the also main important thing, because we are suffering from that for 4 years.
Yes.
And we are ready to share this knowledge with our partners.
So this is a really
this
interesting
country
thing.
they are very rich. Yes. They have lots of money. So this is the also like Ukrainian long-term strategy, because we also expecting that these guys from the Gulf they will invest money to Ukrainian milk
and I think they already are. I think that over the past week we've heard cases of drone producers who have been contacted,
Flamingo story,
Yeah.
The story with Yuzhny and so on, like even Sapsan ballistic missile. It was one story even before full-scale invasion.
Yes.
But we also speaking about like crazy Arabian money which might be invested to our real cluster of economy, agrarian infrastructure, food production, whatever, like recovery in general.
Yeah.
Before the war, we had lots of tourists from Saudi Arabia, from oil.
Yeah.
Like,
This is
a huge potential.
This is a new quality, I think, for Ukraine's defense industry. But before we continue, a quick note for our listeners. So at KI Insights, we're launching a new premium product line called Defense Analytics. This is a dedicated defense analysis service focused on battlefield developments, defense technology innovation, procurement trends, how Russia is adapting militarily over time, and a whole lot of related issues. It's designed for people who need more than headlines, those who really rely on structures, decision-focused analytics. So if you're interested in this, please do reach out to us, insights at KyivIndependent.com, to find out more about this product. So coming back to the point of Ukrainian defense, for me, one of the big questions, because we've seen, just to get this out there, obviously we've seen a lot of defense producers being contacted, like, hey, can you send us interceptors? But it's not as simple as that, right? You need to bring people who actually understand
instructors,
this. You
operators.
need instructors, train them. You need detection systems, right?
Yeah.
And Ukraine has, by the way, fantastic solutions when it comes to actually detecting these
drones,
low-flying drones. Yeah, exactly. You need radio electronic warfare solutions. You need to be able to understand how to adapt Ukrainian solutions to the environment there, where, a lot of Ukrainian drone technologies would not work in the jungle or would not work in mountains because you don't have line of sight. Now, luckily, in most of the Gulf, you don't really have jungles and you don't have mountains, right?
Yeah.
So that problem is not as critical there, but still, you're operating over waterways. Like, it's a different environment. Temperatures are different. There's a lot of things that need to be adapted. So, just that because a team of Ukrainians shows up in Bahrain or in Qatar, over the next week doesn't mean that they'll be able to shoot down Iranian drones, in the following days. I think that's definitely a part of the question. But that being said, money is already flowing towards Ukraine. Now, my question to you, because you know the political scene very well, does this mean that we will have a market-led growth, that defense producers will start to establish their own contacts, that they will start to grow and sort of build, I would say, without a central coordination? Or is this something that will be micromanaged from the very top of leadership?
I think it's like the second stuff, because it's a huge pie. It's a huge pie.
Yeah.
And the second is that it's the element of personal political contacts between Zelensky and the Gulf monarchies.
Sure.
So this is like, it's based on like very deep and very long interpersonal negotiation track.
Yes.
Because OAE, they are our key partner in negotiations, like prisoner exchanges. Saudi Arabia as well, like Oman, long story, Bahrain.
This is, by the way, very interesting that Ukraine actually has strong diplomatic relations with most of the countries in the region.
Yes,
right?
because, even like before the war, we were selling for
tourism,
banking, yes, food, and so on,
Yeah.
But now we are growing on another level.
Sure.
But of course, I assume that the biggest contracts will be concentrated in some private companies like Flamingo or etc. etc.
Firepoint, that's the Flamingo producer.
Sorry,
yeah, absolutely.
Exactly, Firepoint like this. But the steel market is so huge because I personally know like more than like 5 companies which are in producing drone interceptors in the garage.
So this
market is big. So
it is very big. It is very big. And by the way, the idea that Ukraine is a major defense producer is actually not that new, because in the years before the full-scale invasion, if you take sort of a period of a decade and a half, I believe Ukraine has been as high as 5th or 6th biggest defense producer or exporter globally. Most of that period, most of the 2000s, it was in the top 10, meaning towards the end of the 10. But
it was Soviet heritage, honestly. We were selling Soviet...
absolutely, but that heritage worked, and actually some of that technology has now been adapted. So the motors, I don't know, by the way, this might be slightly apocryphal, but some of the early models of including, I think, the Shahed drones, actually had motors
from Ukraine,
from Motor Sich in Zaporizhia, which is now being targeted by those Shaheds.
That's why it was the aim for Chinese. They would like to. So even like I heard from some of my friends from Office of the President, our intelligence is believed that the Iran was the main producer actually of these drones for Russia. Not Al Abuga in Tatarstan and so on. Because when the conflict has happened, Russians, they significantly reduced to sending drones to Ukraine.
So this is interesting.
So it means that they was reducing some parts, receiving some parts, or some final products or something else.
Yeah.
But it was reduced significantly. So it means that these states like Iran, Russia, they interconnected, even in China.
Absolutely.
So this is actually one block, one very connected union. But at the same time, if you're talking about this business high tech, yes, the pie is big. The contracts is running already, because it's not only about air drones. This is also about sea drones.
Yes,
we have great sea drones.
Actually, that might be
for some countries like Saudi Arabia. This is the also very extremely important to fight against Yemen rebels and so on, because some countries they're delivering by sea for them munition and so on. We have a huge potential of cooperation, and even if we see. This is actually my forecast that after war, in case if it's get frozen or stopped somehow in Ukraine, Ukrainian leadership will make these private armies, private companies, military companies, and I think in the future each global conflict or regional conflict or local conflict around the globe will include Ukrainian.
So Ukraine is going to be a part of the wars of the 21st century.
This is the reality. I'm 100% sure that in case if 2030, 2040, there is some conflict happen in Africa, because we have already been in Sudan.
Yes,
we've been over.
Well, not just there. I mean, across sort of the northern Africa, Niger and Mali, and so
we
forth,
will be everywhere. So this is the also reality, because we already know that there is some nations which are providing infantry, cheap infantry for the conflicts, for money.
Yes,
but it will be much more higher level. This is the reality.
I think that definitely, and sort of coming back to our initial question about, are we in World War III? Well, probably it's going to be looking quite differently, but we're already deep in the midst of that sort of complicated hodgepodge of different things that, you know, can definitely be seen as unrelated, but in fact they're all sort of very interconnected. Just sort of looking at so we are at the beginning of March. It's been an eventful year. We've had operations in Venezuela. We've had the Olympics. We've had peace talks that have been falling apart. Some other sort of loud events. A year of Trump. I think quite a few sort of domestic disturbances in the U.S. that sort of have. I think that plays a role, just given sort of how much the U.S. is destabilizing the world. Domestic politics there matter a lot. What's your feeling about the rest of the year? So first of all, is there a sense that there is a vision for when the war in Ukraine might end?
This is my personal feeling and my personal opinion that we may finish this war only with coordination of interests of US, Russia, China, and Europe.
Okay.
So it's impossible to finish this war without to find common ground on Ukrainian issue in Europe, because it's both sensitive for different sides. And we know that now interests of all these four players are completely different.
Which is I think interesting, and that's something that is being discussed right now, is like about bringing in China, about bringing in Europe. I mean, it's about talking about new formats. I think
April,
even the president
it may happen.
Yeah.
April, it may happen when we will have summit Xi and Trump. It's potential that this issue could be discussed. But otherwise, like we see that the old global order is fully ruined.
Sure.
Like it's fully ruined. Unfortunately, the international law doesn't work anymore. The strong leaders, the strong states, they are ruining this old order.
So I think that's true. That I think we've already been in that process for a few years. But now, for me, the big question is, how does the year end? Right? Because you're right.
I think the new war may happen in Taiwan.
Yes. So
because honestly, look on the China. US starting own operations. Russia is starting own operations. US focusing and concentrating all resources on
the US very much now on track to get stuck in the Middle East.
And engaged in Middle East.
Yeah. I mean, let's see, in a few weeks they could still pull out, but they are currently in a trajectory that means you will get stuck there and spend all of your missiles and expend a huge amount of resources.
This is the best time and the best conditions for China occupy Taiwan.
Yes.
And what US will provide for them?
Yes.
Nothing.
Especially if it's shortly before or even better, shortly after the midterm elections.
They always, yes, exactly. My personal opinion that before elections or after elections, the new crisis in Pacific will start around Taiwan.
So I mean, it looks plausible. It looks highly plausible.
China, they always training. They always preparing. They preparing for the big war.
So my final question is this, right? In any other presidency, we would expect that the midterm elections, so the US is going to vote to sort of change the seats in Congress at the end of the year. In any other presidency, that would be a reason for, I think, stabilization, in the sense of some populism, some promises, but trying to make sure to rally your base so that they actually vote for you, right? So the ruling party wants to get reelected in the parliamentary elections. So some promises, right? But this is something that what you're probably going to do is you're only going to implement policies that are very, very popular, right? And Trump is currently looking quite bad. His prospects for the midterms, or the Republicans' prospects for the midterms, looks quite bad. Although I think the overall popularity doesn't mean that as many seats change because of gerrymandering and so forth, but it looks very negative. But now, as we get closer to the end of November, the beginning of November, do we expect that Trump will push more for normal policies, or will he continue to do crazy gambles like Iran, because this is the craziest thing to do if you actually want to win in November. So what is your sense? Are we going to actually see a rational path or an increasingly crazy path?
Crazy, of course, crazy. Because there is Cuba, there is Greenland, there is Nigeria.
So the point is that we're just going to throw the whole table upside down.
Yeah, you have to destroy everything.
Okay.
Everything. And then you have to build a new world order.
Yes.
So this is the logically...
By the board of peace.
Yes.
Yes.
Actually, this is I think that the personal Trump's idea was this peace council, So this is actually new UN.
Yeah.
So if you would like to launch a new institution, you have to create a huge crisis before that. So, and for that huge crisis,
we're clearly on that direction.
Conflict with China, this is the best option. Even do not have elections. We never know.
Yeah.
We never know.
Yeah, that seems very, very radical, but again, it's hard to imagine. I think let's so clearly the prospect that 2026 is only going to get wilder as we go along. Anatoliy, I'm afraid I agree with that. I think that's currently this is the main risk for middle class. Yes.
Like if you take a look on the previous wars, the most difficult situation was in the poor part of the population in general.
Yeah.
Now all these developments, they are affecting and they are very sharp in middle class.
Yes.
So around the world. Not
true.
The rich, not the poor. Of course, they are already suffering.
Yeah.
But this middle class, this is the main victim of this.
That's an interesting point. So, but that being said, I think that's where we're going to close off today. I think a challenging perspective for the rest of the year, but it is what it is. We'll continue to observe this, and if you're enjoying this series of podcasts, please do subscribe, follow, like our whether it's the audio or the video versions. It really helps us get our messages out there. So Anatoliy, thank you so much for coming in today, and have a great day.
Thank you, Jakub. Bye.
If you enjoy Ukraine Insights, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a friend or colleague who follows developments in Ukraine. Your support helps us bring independent voices and informed perspectives to a global audience.